Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Very Connected podcast. And it's where we share on all kinds of topics related to bariatric surgery. And today I'm excited we're being joined by Dr. Kristin Lloyd. Say hello, Kristin.
Hi, everybody.
I'm really excited to have Kristin as a guest. We met back at Obesity Help. And Kristin, I know I had seen you on probably on social media and stuff before, and just to get to connect with you in person and get to meet you. And she had a booth there, and I'm telling you, it was crowded the whole day. People were just walking to meet her and learn all about what she does. And kind of like just a little brief synopsis. I'm going to kind of go through your bio just a little bit. Really, I feel like you do a lot of different kind of things and just kind of incorporate like a lot of different kind of tools together. So she's a psychotherapist, a mindset coach, she's a college educator, consultant, and I also saw that you were a Reiki master, which I love. And she basically takes all of that, helps people through, I guess, her courses and her counseling. Also has been through weight management herself. And so, Krista, at this point, I'm going to kind of just turn it over and let you do more of a deeper dive into what you do and how people know you and the people you work with. I would love to know more.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you to ProCare Health. I've been a big fan for a while. I tell everybody, I'm sure you guys know your calcium chocolates are a big hit. Among other things, you guys have a lot of amazing products. But it was also really great to meet you at Obesity Health. And it's always great to connect in person because I think the world of I see some chat coming through. I know that social media, we can connect on social media, but I think that when we're able to connect in person and really make that personal connection, it's just really touching. And I will share a little bit of my story to kind of help people understand where I've been, where I've come from. I was a therapist before I ever had weight loss surgery. And I wrote a little bit about that in my book, Bariatric Mindset Success, which is really how I started into the world of bariatrics after my surgery. But I actually stopped doing therapy and moved into coaching and psychoeducation because I noticed in the therapeutic process, I'm a big proponent of therapy. I'm not poo-pooing therapy. I tell my clients who are in my programs, when you're in therapy, in addition to this, it's going to help you. But I take my background in therapy, in psychology, and merge it with education because when you have somebody who's coming in week to week and they're like, this happened this week, this happened this week, you don't really get an opportunity to connect the whole picture of where they've been and where they are to really make these connections. And the focus of psychotherapy and sometimes even in coaching is let the client come to their own conclusions and to their own answers, which, yes, I do believe in. But if we can help that along through connecting some of those dots with education, with utilizing a lot of the psychological theory, some people say that my classes are kind of like a college class, but I don't mean it in the sense of like, we're not um I bring it down to like a very lay level, or I try to, but I connect the dots for people in a way that they're like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm struggling with this because of A, B, and C. And okay, so how do I fix it? Like, how do I, create growth? And there's some things that I say, take this back into therapy, work on this with your therapist, right? So, because I will be honest, I usually don't work with folks who are like, okay, I need a meal plan. You just tell me what my basics are. I got it. I'm moving. Like, those are not my people. I love you guys. You're amazing. Rock on. My people are really the people that are like, I'm so afraid that I'm going to fail. I failed at this so many times. and I'm terrified, and my life is a fail. Like, it's not, but those are the types of people that I want to work with, because the perfectionists, the people pleasers, the codependents, like, those are my peeps, right? The folks who have had childhood attachment issues, the folks who have had childhood trauma. Now, I'm not doing therapy. We're not doing therapy. Again, I suggest that they have therapy. What we're doing is a lot of psychoeducation and teaching them about themselves, which kind of leads into our topic for today, which is about a relationship with self, which I think is foundational to this journey for the people that I work with, because there are tons of people that probably are like, yeah, I don't need you. Again, great. But I know that there are a lot of people who do, or who feel body shame, have had, you know, a lot of things show up in their lives, and they're not sure how they're going to live without food as a coping mechanism.
So Kristin, oh, so Kristin, tell us too your what got you interested in this, doing this.
Um, I had vertical sleeve gastrectomy in 2013. I originally was supposed to have surgery in 2012, and I was getting ready to get scheduled for surgery in 2012 when I found out I was pregnant with my son. And they were like, Kristin, you can't have surgery. And I'm like, why? You're pregnant. So I had my son, and I was like, great, I'm going to lose weight. Because everybody in my family who's breastfed lost weight. And I didn't. And I didn't know it at the time. I had gone to therapy, I'd gone to multiple nutritionists, I had done, you name it, I did it. HCG, phentermine. My weight was an issue from the time I was 11 or 12, like right at the onset of puberty. My body had always been a problem, or at least that's how it felt. My parents were on diets for most of my life. My grandmothers were on diets, they lived with us. Um, Dieting was something that we did in our family. And so when I finally had my son and didn't realize I was eating a half a gallon of ice cream in secret where no one could see me. But even prior to that, I would sneak eat whole pizzas, and then I would go home and make dinner. I um, would hide food. I would lie to myself. I would diet, lose 50 pounds, and then get exhausted and gain it back. And then when it got to the point that after I'd had my son, because this was like back and forth through most of my life, where, and again, already a therapist, had already had a practice, had already done that. This was not my focus. Didn't know how to help myself. Could help others, didn't know how to help myself. This was like the big wound in my life. Had my son, thought I would lose weight, was counting um calories in the MyFitnessPal app, and got to a point where wasn't counting what I was lying to myself about, because it didn't count, but clearly it was showing up on my body. And I didn't feel that I could speak my truth. I was highly passive aggressive, had a lot of codependent characteristics, didn't know it, had been in therapy for years. Nobody ever called it out. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that I had it, was depressed, anxious, um, didn't know that I had anxiety, was never diagnosed with anxiety, had undiagnosed ADHD, found that out probably when I was around 40. So I'm walking around with all of these things, not realizing that I was soothing with food. Had There was one day that I struggled with getting down on the floor with my son. I had already been in a PhD program, because I started that when I was 8 months pregnant, because perfectionist, people pleasing, overachiever, like, you know who you are, right? Those people, like, I identify with my client. And my husband, he doesn't remember saying this, but I've said this on other podcasts, I've said this in different places where he came to me and said, I just don't want you to die. And it was very telling for me. It was like an eye opener for me that here I am, I'm killing myself with food. And I even get emotional now thinking about it because I didn't even realize that I was doing it. Didn't even realize. So in my PhD program, it's like divine intervention. I was planning on doing a dissertation on digital nomads of all things. And my committee got switched up because my dissertation chair had left the university. So this new dissertation chair came in and she's like, Kristin, with a very thick Southern, what are you passionate about? So you're not passionate about this topic. And at that point, I'd already had surgery. And I said, well, I want to know more about this because I'd been struggling. I had depression after surgery. I didn't know who I was. We'd moved from Washington State, where I had a thriving practice, to Georgia to be closer to family. And I had massive anxiety because I couldn't use food to soothe, couldn't find a therapist that I felt connected to that really understood me. And I started to have suicidal thoughts. And I started to do a lot of research and couldn't really find anything. And needed more than even what my surgical center could provide at that time. And I was like, there's got to be something here. And so I said, well, I'm interested in bariatrics. And she's like, okay, so are you working in the field? And I said, no. And she said, why not? I said, because I'm not perfect yet. I had no idea. And so this has been not just an effort of me getting to know myself, but also learning how disconnected many people are from their own lives and their own bodies because of needing for our bodies to look a certain way so that we're accepted by society. Because that's kind of the primary, a lot of times what we're taught is your body is a problem and how you eat, how you self-regulate for those who use food to soothe. And it becomes a very personal journey, especially when you have this surgery. You can't eat in the same way. You can't stuff your feelings. Now you've got to feel them. And if there's been trauma, if there's been a disconnection from self, if you don't know enough about yourself, now you can't use your primary coping mechanism. Holy crap. There's a lot of stuff there. So
I
that's
think this is I
got
feel
here.
like so many people can resonate with what you're saying. I feel like I know I can because I mean I have a lot of those same tendencies in my personality. Um, by the way, if anybody is watching live, make sure and say hi to us. And if you do have questions during this presentation, please feel free to post
Ask
those and we'll
away.
try to
Yeah.
answer. We have Kristin saying hello, another Kristin. And Jenny, Maggie, we have Linda. I'm jumping back and forth from Facebook to Zoom. Tara, um, B. Arlene, Diana, Jacqueline, Krista, Janet, Denise, um, Jennifer. So Charles, hello all. So anyways, please feel free. We want this to be interactive. So if you guys do have questions, please let us know. We'd be happy to answer. And Krista, I feel like this is a great time, a segue to jump into kind of like what you're going to be talking about. Because you kind of already segued into that already. Um, and I feel like this has probably been with my own journey of where I am. like one of my biggest things is just making sure I'm trying to be as authentic as I can. And what does that look like?
Yeah.
And what do we look like as a person? Like sometimes I think as we identify with so many different labels, mom,
Oh, yeah.
maybe for you, psychologist, mindset coach, you identify with your job. I identify with my job a lot. Like there's a lot of different things and people see you as that person, but that's not really who we are. There's so much more. So go
Yeah.
into start with that, like your first identification of, what is the relationship with self? What does it mean? Why is it important?
So many, I mean, I identify as a wife, as a mother, like I know in 15, 20 minutes, my son's gonna get off the bus. My husband's gonna get the door. We both work from home. I get out of bed in the morning and the first thing that we do is, one of us feeds the cat and then he's getting dressed for school. I'm making his breakfast. Like we wear many hats. So I'm a mom, I'm a wife. Yes, I'm a mindset coach. Um I'm a woman. Um I think there are many parts to I also identify as my family comedian. I mean, um
Man,
I'm really funny in my personal life. We make jokes a lot and we laugh a lot together. So we're all many things, right? And the other thing I want to say, just because this is not so much an identification of self, but just an identification of the human experience, because I will say I'm human. I make mistakes. It's not that I intend to make mistakes, but I think we also need to normalize there is so much perfectionism in so many of the clients that I work with that I try to normalize we're human and we're going to make mistakes. And I am not perfect. I have really adjusted a lot to not be perfect in everything, but that doesn't mean I don't get anxious. That doesn't mean that I won't have bad days, nor will anybody else. Like, I want to help people understand that we're not always going to have high highs and we're not always going to have low lows. But when I talk about a relationship with self, I think the other thing that comes up is I think about children and creativity. And this is, I don't have necessarily the research at my fingertips, but there's something, I don't remember if it's fourth or fifth grade that children transition to more of that serious work where there's less play and there's less creativity. And I do believe that we're still curious, but we're curious and funneling that a lot of times into our work or into a way to exist, right? So we have careers, we go to work. Some people go to trade school, some people to go to college, some people, whatever it is that you do. And then what do you do with the rest of your life? Right. So the other thing, I was reading something recently where, yeah, we talk about hobbies or what do you do for fun? But a lot of time we're disconnected from what is it that we want to do or what is it that we enjoy, either because we haven't allowed ourselves that experience. It's sometimes there is hardship where it's a financial decision, and sometimes it's an interest. Who are you hanging around with? There's so many things, but when it comes to a relationship with self, and one of the things that I wrote and sharing the synopsis is like motivation, desires, personal or professional fulfillment, um, and how we talk to ourselves. So how we talk to ourselves has a lot to do with the family that we grew up in, right? So if you're encouraging and you have an I can do it attitude versus you're such a piece of crap, why do you even bother? Like that's that's some people's self-talk. Like that's not motivating. Yet, if what you've seen as motivation is more like self-punitive or self-punishment, it takes practice to detach from that. But when we think of who we are at our core, I found that a lot of the people that I work with don't know, because it's like that quote, who were you before the world told you who to be? So a lot of times we are who we are because of the decisions that we've made. It's almost like it just is like snowballs. Oh, I went to school, automatically I went here, or I got married, or I landed in this job and then I got stuck and then this happened. It's like it just kind of happens rather than going, wait a second, what do I want? And again, it could be circumstance. But where I think this journey is a reset, and where I've seen it, I even saw it in my dissertation research, where it was women that I interviewed that they said for the first time in their life, they felt seen. For the first time in their life, their voice mattered. They were asked to contribute to work events. Like I'm getting chills. Like there was one woman who had studied to be either a director or producer, and she didn't think she could achieve it because of her weight, because there is so much weight stigma. And it wasn't until she had weight loss surgery and lost the weight that she started producing and directing films. It was like, that's what is it that you wanted to do, that you've always wanted to do, that food, your relationship with food, or obesity, right? The weight piece, you feeling invisible kept you from, right? So there's so many different facets, and I could probably go in so many different directions and talk on forever, but I'm curious if there's a specific place to go, because when we come back to the self, my answer is going to be different from your answer, that's going to be different from somebody else's answer. But sometimes it's that I don't know if I even want to look at that, because it is scary, because it can change your outlook on life. And you deciding who you want to be is something you get to do.
There's some comments too.
Yeah,
I'm going to bring in. So on Facebook, somebody said awesome comments, by the way. And then we have someone says, I definitely feel like I'm dependent on food. It's going to be hard to find a new way to cope with things, and that's scary.
yeah,
Um, it's definitely it's definitely a day by day thing, I think, for
yes, it
myself
is.
of different things. Krista says, I feel like that after I wake up from the surgery and I realized I can no longer eat the same as I did before, it's going to feel very lonely. I
Mhm.
can't really articulate it. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way. I know for myself, I had weight loss surgery about the same time you did, Kristen. And for me, I can remember, and even now, like whenever I go out to eat and things like that, like everybody else is still eating, and most of the time I'm done and just sitting
Yeah,
there. And sometimes it is, it's kind of like, okay, it feels weird, like you're just sitting there and you're not really doing anything. And it becomes more about conversation than honestly sometimes just all about the food.
yeah.
How would you answer that question though, about feeling lonely and not feeling the same way?
I think, and I just saw somebody mention about dealing with emotions. I think it's all about the emotions. I think it's very much about the emotions, because when we think of loneliness, right? And there are different schools of thought on loneliness, because there are some places where I've seen that loneliness is a state of mind, right? Where um you can be around people, you can be in a room full of people and be lonely, and you can be by yourself and be lonely, right? Because it
Mm-hmm.
also depends on who's with you. It depends on how safe it feels to be vulnerable with who you're with, right? So I use the term safety, but what I mean by safety is how connected you feel. Because I think it's Gabor Mate who said it's not the absence of safety or security. It's not the something like that. It's not the absence of security that makes us feel safe. It's the presence of connection. And he's written several books on nervous system regulation, the stress disease connection. He's a medical doctor, and I love his stuff. But it's the thing about loneliness and the thing about food is food for many people has been how we have connected. We have connected through food. Food is a very social experience. We connect through food and with food. But I can be in a room holding a plate of food and still connect. I don't have to have that food going right now. That's one way of thinking about it. But we have maybe used food to calm and to self-soothe in a way that we haven't yet been able to do that with ourselves. So it's Gabor Mate, and he has a book called When the Body Says No. I think it's exploring the stress disease connection. I literally will read page 65 of that book on some of my calls, because he actually talks about there are many studies that show there's a connection between codependency and people pleasing and breast cancer in women. It's interesting, to say the least. So it has nothing to do with weight loss. He doesn't talk about weight loss in that book, but he talks about the presence of the stress disease connection. So, but the reason I use that quote is because it is a lot of nervous system regulation. When we think of the trauma response, when we think of how we were raised, a lot of the stuff that I talk about in my work, in my courses and in my programs, some of it is like attachment and attachment theory, and then nervous system regulation in the body. A lot of the people that I work with are disconnected from their body, so they have what we call head hunger or an emotional hunger. And so we come back to, are you physically hungry, right? And there are a lot of things that we can see, like here's physical hunger, here's emotional hunger. But another thing that shows up is if we're not connected with our bodies, are we really in tune with, are we physically hungry? However, if there is a trauma response, thank you. When the body says no, yes, thank you. When there's a trauma response, it can actually be very difficult to be in your body. This is why I'm a big advocate for therapy. So where I will, suggest to people, if you're struggling with this, get a somatic therapist, get a body-based therapist, get a trauma, specialist therapist, because when we have what we call attachment issues, and many of us who are about my age, I assume your age too, like, of course, could be generational, but it's don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about. That statement, when heard enough, basically says don't feel, don't express yourself, shut it down, and deal with it. So we're not able to express, we're not able to be heard, be validated, be understood. So then what do we learn? Don't feel, don't show emotion, don't cry, don't make noise, right? Children should be seen and not heard. These are things that I also heard in childhood. And what it does for a lot of us, some people may say, oh, you're soft, da 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 da, but I think what it does is it leaves us unexpressed. And then if you have families that utilize food as coping, right? Or especially in the early days, if you cry, you got a bottle. You cried, you got a pacifier, right? So if you also had, I'm going to use a big word here, but a dysregulated parent, a parent who couldn't handle their emotions, a parent who was severely depressed, a parent who was severely anxious, a parent who was an alcoholic, right? A parent who had been in wartime. I work with a lot of people who, and their parents may have been Vietnam veteran, World War II veteran, Korea, right? And those folks come back and they're using alcohol to numb what they saw, what they felt. Like we're doing better with PTSD now, we're doing better with veterans, probably not still where we need to be, but that's another story. So what do we learn from what was modeled for us in childhood? So now this isn't going to be everybody, and I realize that there are going to be people that aren't going to resonate with this. But what I see and what I work with are very specific things that it's like don't feel, and they've been eating their feelings, eating their emotions for a very long time. Don't be too much. Don't be too loud. Don't be too visible. Right. I also work with trauma survivors of sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. It can be scary to lose weight if your body is now smaller and there is a fear of an assault, right? Or if that comes back. Those are the things that some people may not make the connections with that. Yes, I'm like, these are the therapeutic, this is where you may need to be in therapy with somebody who's very fear of being noticed, right? Fear of being seen. Yet, here's the thing, a lot of times it's not just the fear of being seen from others, it's sometimes people are so busy hiding, they don't even see themselves. They don't acknowledge their own needs. They don't know what they need because their whole life has been don't feel, shut it down, don't have emotions, don't. So now they're like walking around, not even acknowledging I'm hurt. And then they're coping with food. And then they're like, why do I have this problem? Why can't I just lose this weight? Because it was not ever, it's not really about that. It is, but why you're eating to soothe is what's underneath it all.
Kristen, let me ask you too, what would you say would be a few steps for someone who might be in that situation? Like, what would you suggest being some starting points to be able to have a better relationship with yourself? And there's quite a few questions coming in. We'll get to
Yeah.
all of those too.
So first of all, I think there's got to be a willingness and curiosity, first of all, because the judgment and criticism, like we have to, I would say this as though not just advice that I'm giving, but just as if I were in my group with my folks, I would say, are you open and willing to be curious? Are you open and willing to suspend judgment and criticism? Because the judgment and criticism that we have of our bodies, the judgment criticism that we have or hold against weight, right? There's why can't I just lose this weight? Like there's a can we just put that aside for a second? Can we put weight over here just for a minute and acknowledge that we're human and that we have human needs? Can we be in presence of that? And can we be curious? So And curiosity is like one of the foundations. Curious about, because when we're wanting chips or chocolate or something, is that what we're really wanting? Or are we wanting validation? Are we wanting to be seen? Not by everyone necessarily, but are we wanting to be seen by our boss, our spouse, our children? Are we wanting to be seen for what we do and who we are? Are we available to be seen by ourselves? Because a lot of times, even the hobbies that people have are, instead of bringing them back to themselves, they're taking them away. So again, if we're going to work and then we come home and we're watching television or on the phone or we're scanning and scrolling, look, first of all, we're human. We all do that. I do that. But are you willing to set aside some time to journal, to ask yourself deeper questions, to be curious about what your desires are today? Often people go, oh, that's not going to be possible for me. No, I'm not going to get there. Like there's usually this automatic, I'm almost like I'm not worthy of that. Are you willing to shift your belief or suspend judgment and criticism of what you believe or think you're worthy of for 5 minutes? Are you willing to be curious about why your face is in the fridge in a non-judgmental way? Are you willing to practice compassion for yourself like you would a best friend? Are you willing to see yourself differently, not just from a body perspective, but from a need perspective, from a heart perspective, from a soul perspective? So in terms of what can you do, like, yeah, we want to fix the food. We want to stop emotional eating. We want to lose the weight. And yet, yeah, it's scary to be vulnerable. And like Brene Brown says, vulnerability is courage. However, the other thing that I truly believe in, and Brene Brown says this too, is who you're vulnerable with matters. Who you're vulnerable with matters. You're not going to be vulnerable with the whole world. You're going to be vulnerable with people who you can trust. And if you don't have people that you can trust, first of all, you need a new circle, because that's the foundation of who can I be vulnerable with? Who can I show myself to? Who can see me for who I really am and accept me for who I really am? Because I'm gonna mess up. I'm not perfect. And you were talking about masks earlier, right? I'm gonna have a typo in my email. I'm going to cough. I'm gonna, something that somebody else may think is like, oh, that's no big deal. You're just human. Like, what if my nose starts running? Like, these are the things that sometimes get into our head. What if somebody sees me and I have food on my face? What if like whatever? Like, being vulnerable is going to be different things to different people. What if I trip over my shoe? What if I'm in a presentation and I get nauseous? And had somebody tell me that a long time ago, like, you're human. You're human. Accepting that we're human, accepting our humanity is foundational, yet it seems like a big step for a lot of people. And being vulnerable isn't for everybody. And meaning you're not going to be vulnerable with everybody. You're going to be vulnerable with who matters to you, who you trust, who you can hold that space with, and who can hold that space with you. And a lot of times the people who we're closest to, family, are the people who criticize us the most. Are you going to eat that? Does your doctor, like, are you sure you're allowed to eat that? Oh, you're going to regain your weight. And that hurts. And that sometimes creates a bunch of stuff in our head where now we're really like eating to get away from the thoughts and the feelings. And again, the nervous system, the physiology piece, a lot of people don't talk about, which is I'm uncomfortable going to this family gathering. We're in February, right? But this isn't something, Easter's around the corner. How many people have Easter gatherings where you're going to have family that maybe you haven't seen since Christmas? Have you lost all that weight yet? How's that weight loss surgery going? And they're constant, passive aggressive jabs where we want to say that that doesn't mean anything to us. And yet those comments cut like knives. And so we can't be vulnerable if we don't feel safe. I know that wasn't
So,
exactly like,
no, it was
yeah,
to me what I got out of that is two major points. Number one, spend time like assessing,
yeah,
like if there's something that comes up really strong for you, it might be a trigger for you, or it something causes you a little pain or anguish, emotionally, maybe even physically, then I would say spend
believe
time
yourself.
spend time like looking inward and journaling if that's what it helps. I know that's one of the biggest things. And then the second thing that you mentioned is the finding vulnerability, but finding people you trust that you can talk to and share with.
Right.
Is that the
Yeah.
2 points?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Yeah. Because
yeah, there's
that's,
several things here too. I'm gonna read a couple of these comments
yes.
on Facebook. Kristin says it feels like you're reaching into my brain and heart. This resonates so deeply. So people understand what you're saying here. And then we have some comments here. Let me move my comment box out um, on the Zoom. Um, Victoria says, I spent my whole life not allowing myself to feel emotions. I've always hid my true feelings and emotions. This is scary, vulnerable. Um, but I really want to, and I feel like I'm ready. I'm glad I'm here. Katie says, sorry for being late. Okay, that's okay. Wanda says, I didn't tell anyone in my family had weight loss surgery, none of their business. And I think that just like, I feel like you sharing that with only the people you feel most comfortable with. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing with
Right.
anybody,
And may not feel safe. And that's okay.
yeah. Somebody says I avoid family gatherings because of the comments.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you know what? You are where you are. And if that's what helps you in the moment, then I mean, that's what
Yeah.
helps you
Yeah. Yeah.
until you become strong enough. At some point, you may be strong enough where you feel like it doesn't matter anymore. And that's,
Yeah. And I think these are, I do my best to generalize, but I think sometimes there, that's the other thing. This is not cookie cutter, right? There's if this, then that, if this, then that, if this, then that, because that was another part of this is, you know, often people seek answers like we see diet books or this is the way, 28 days, do this, right?
yeah,
Keto, paleo, da da da. It's like, what works for your body, right? Because I work with folks who have autoimmune diseases. Um, I have clients that have lipedema and lymphedema, which is another I would call it an obesity complication, but lipedema and lymphedema, it's called a disease. Um, it's actually a fat disease, and although there's a lot of folks who struggle with losing weight, it is associated with insulin resistance, and there's some folks that can utilize a low carb plan, a very low carb plan, not necessarily a keto, but that can help them reduce inflammation. I'm not a dietitian, but because of the clients that I have and what they report back to me from what their dietitian and nutritionist suggest, that's something that really helps them. But that's not going to work for somebody else who doesn't have those, let's say, autoimmune conditions or complications, right? So that's important to know, right? And we also want to be cautious and conscious because when we're chasing, oh, this is going to work for me, this is going to work for me, we're seeking answers outside of ourselves. what I try to do in my work is bring people back to themselves. You are the source. You are the source. Your genetics, your biology is going to be different than this person's genetics and this person's biology, right? It is not easy. It's not calories out. It is not, because we have different genetics, we have different biology. We have different metabolic conditions. There's some people who have, again, insulin resistance, PCOS, that two different conditions, but they're, often co-occurring. Your body's not going to respond the same way. The other thing is the stress response, right? What I know is a lot of people who have gastrointestinal disorders like IBS, there's a lot of times people who have chronic stress. Okay, so how do you deal with that? You go reduce your stress. How? How do you reduce your stress, right? So a lot of these things are connected back to don't show your feelings, don't have emotions. And I think it was a client way back when shared with me this quote: anger or depression is anger turned inwards. Now that was a quote that she shared with me from her therapist, and I was like, wow, that is brilliant. What's really interesting about that is when we're, let's say, in a constant state of fight flight, in that stress activation, sometimes we're conditioned to that because that's all we've ever known. And yet food, which can be very calming and soothing, flips on your full, calm, collected, and connected. I talk about this in different trainings, your parasympathetic. That's how you flipped over, is using food to, because you can only digest food in a rest and digest state, which is the parasympathetic, which is the calm state. So reaching for food is very natural. But when it reaches a point of self-harm, like morbid obesity, which I struggled with, right? Because I was eating to numb, to escape, to self-soothe. I resonate. Then we have to learn how to cope differently. We have to learn how to stop fighting our bodies and the weight piece. Yes, we all want to lose weight. Yes, we all want to maintain weight. I'm not minimizing that. But sometimes we have to work on the coping tools in order to move that process along. Sometimes we're so fixated on, okay, but I've got to lose the weight, but I've got to lose the weight, but I've got to lose the weight. It's like, okay, but you've got to learn how to self-soothe. You've got to have a relationship with yourself. You've got to trust yourself. I said earlier, I was eating ice cream in the middle of the night, hiding food, lying to myself about what I was eating, lying to myself because I didn't want to deal with the discomfort. Like at some point, we're going to have to deal with the discomfort, and we're not going from, 0 to 60 in terms of, okay, everybody feel the discomfort. And like, no, because that's not what we're doing. That's not where we're going. But in order to start handling the discomfort, we need to know that, first of all, we're in a safe space and that we're surrounded by those who can sit in discomfort with us. Right? So again, if it's therapy, it's therapy, right? If it's a friend group, if it's a support group, you've got to find that safe space. And it's not just emote, because that's another thing. One of the things that I teach, and it's a longer process, it's not something I can just share on here, but there are folks who go, I don't even know how to feel my feelings. I don't even know what I'm feeling. Right. I get that. Like that's I did a workshop on that on Monday with my group, and it was like 2 hours. Like that's not like a, you
An
know,
easy fix all,
it's
do
not
all,
an
right?
easy fix all, right? And we're practicing, right? So they have like almost like 13 weeks, just from that one workshop. They could take that one workshop and turn that into 13 weeks of practice. Do you see what I'm saying? This is not something that we can just, snap our fingers and teach me how to feel. Because it's like, what is this? You know, a lot of times people are afraid of anger, especially women. I'm so afraid that if one of the things I have on my desk is a damn it doll. I'm putting this because I have a background. And I usually tell people, like, get a damn it doll, because you're gonna want to, bang it on the table. But I feel it's a safe way for us to, there's anger is not, none of our emotions are bad. Let me just say that. They're meant to communicate, motivate, or self-validate. Our emotions have purpose. Communicate, or motivate, or self-validate. And when we have self-talk that tells us that we're a failure, that we're a loser, that we're a, fat, blah, 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 like negative, 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 that's not motivating. That's not validating. And there's the tendency to shut us down even more. And then when we have feelings that we don't like, and we certainly don't know how to feel them, it's like, how can I avoid this? How can I numb it? And if we've been taught, go eat something, you know, soothe, numb, avoid, that's what you go to. So how do you change that pattern? We're not flipping a switch. It's a process. It's a practice. For some people, yeah, it can take 6 months. For some people, it can take a year. For some people, if you've been practicing this for 30, 40, 50 years, buckle up, babe. It's going to take a while. But this is also where grace and compassion comes in. And compassion is the kindness that you could show to yourself, just like you would to others. Just like you would to others.
Krista, I'm gonna take we're almost at time right now, but I also want to share some other things. So there's a couple questions. Do you think we could hit on those couple questions just real briefly? And
Yeah.
okay. I'm gonna pick just a couple here. Kathy says, how often does a person's spirituality come into your work? When do you talk about self-identity, and how does their spirituality help or hinder with this?
Oh, that is an amazing question. So in the work that I do, I think it can be very supportive. And basically, I lean into what I would call the God of my clients' understanding, because I work with clients from all spiritual backgrounds. As a matter of fact, in my group right now, I have clients that are Christian, Jewish, Mormon, Baha'i, and I probably have more clients in there that I don't even know what their faith is, because it just hasn't come up yet, right? So I have worked with people from all different backgrounds, and I think that faith can be especially important because it's something to lean on. And I find that often clients don't lean on it enough, or what a lot of times what happens is there is the presence of their higher power, but they're not utilizing it in a way that can actually, where they're leaning on that, right? So when we're able to utilize faith and spirituality, I think it can be a great asset. Can be a great asset. So I have clients that when they are saying, okay, this is my faith and it's very important to me, it's like, great. And then they're like, where did that come from? Because I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that to support you. But if somebody comes in and they're like, hey, I'm agnostic, I'm atheist, okay, well, I'm going to look up, I'm going to do the research on that belief. um, to make sure that whatever your faith base is, when I'm working with them, I think that faith is a big um, support mechanism. It's also how you utilize it in order to support your journey. So I think that it comes in a lot. It's just how much do you want to utilize it on your own journey. But I don't ever put my beliefs. I listen to what my clients are telling me, and then I'll bring in their beliefs in a way that really can help support them and resonate them on their journey.
That was a great answer. Charles says, Dr. Lloyd, do you ever get to Omaha, Nebraska?
I've never been to Nebraska. As a matter of fact, I have an event that's in Seattle next week. So I do make it to different places, and it usually has to do with um where people are interested in going, and it's usually whenever I do in-person events, it's usually for um like a retreat or an in-depth it's usually a smaller group. So and then um like I said, like an in-person event, tools, um I don't even, like an intensive, almost like an intensive where we're not doing like a, yes, I was at OH and I've been like talking at those type events, but usually if I'm traveling to go somewhere, it's usually for the more intimate events where there's like 5 or 7 individuals. I have not been to Nebraska. I've heard it is beautiful, and there's a lot of places I haven't been to. So um I'm
They'll have to
grateful.
invite you. They'll have
Are
to
you in
invite you.
Nebraska too?
No, I'm in
Oh,
Missouri, but
okay. I
they're
haven't
saying
been
in the
there
fall.
either, but I've
Oh,
had a lot of clients from Missouri, interestingly enough.
we'll have to invite you to Nebraska and Missouri is what we'll have to do.
Yes, yes.
Where are you from?
Originally, I'm from Miami. I'm originally from Miami. I've made my way all the way around the world, lived in Seattle, and now I live outside of Atlanta in Georgia.
Okay, okay. It looks like they're telling if you want to reach out to them.
Yes.
We're gonna give you guys Dr. Kristin Lloyd's information here shortly too. So how about we kind of, Kristin, are you okay with me sharing a few
Oh,
things
yeah.
here? Okay, so first of all, I want to say I know that you offer, so Kristin actually has courses and she has both. So first of all, I'm going to kind of share my screen and
Okay.
I'm going to go on to your courses.
Okay.
So bariatric mindset success.com. Again, bariatric mindset success.com. And is there anything you'd like to share on this with your courses?
So there's the thing that is, I would say, in terms of, what people are interested in, I definitely recommend, if you have not, either if you've not had surgery, or the mindset behind your macros is a good foundation, I think, of the why. And I think whenever I start working with someone, why do I have to have this much protein? I say this again, I'm not a dietitian. A lot of the resources that I use in the mindset behind your macros I actually got from the Cleveland Clinic and the Mayo Clinic. And so, but I found that a lot of people were like, why do I need to move my body? Why do I need to have water? And so I found that by sharing the why and a greater understanding of what shows up there, it is extremely foundational, helps a lot of people. So I think that, that's a great foundational course, and it's a 4-part series, and it's totally free. The other thing that I have right now, which is like an ongoing membership, is um it's an audio, it's called GTS, and it's I'm wondering if it's like, it may be farther down. I don't know that I see it up at the top of the page, but it's guidance,
Is it
training,
on another
support.
page,
It's not
maybe?
there. It might be on another. page 5.
I
Somebody
also
asked
have
how
some.
do I count macros. Um, I'm not a dietitian, so that's not something I usually like discuss or talk to people about. I think that that's something I usually refer back to like dietitians or nutritionists, just because um, what I do for, again, I think that it's very personalized. What I do for me doesn't work for other people. Like I think there was even one time I shared something um on Instagram where I was having lunch one day and I was like, this is why I don't tell people what to eat, because or show what I eat, because the minute we go there, people are like, what do you eat? And I'm like, I like pistachios and bone broth and broccoli salad. And some people are like, that's disgusting. Why would you? Because that's what I like, right? But I'm not telling you um what to eat. So I'm going to put this in here because this is the what I call the GTS membership. I think it's not showing on the main page, but it is a it's a library of audios. And why I've created this and why I think it's awesome is, number one, a lot of people, when there's video, it it can be um not necessarily overwhelming, but people want something in short bits. And I had a membership a long time ago with like hour-long videos, and I got a lot of feedback that it was too much. It was too much all at once. So what I've done is I've created audios that are less than 20 minutes, small snippets of just a variety of different things, emotion, how we handle situations, how we self advocate, um, a lot of different wisdom, how to slow ourselves down and be present with ourselves, right? Um, I have guided breathing techniques in there, a lot of different tools, understanding how we develop competency, which sounds interesting, like how we make choices, especially when there may be impulsivity, because there is a 50% overlap in ADHD and obesity, which there's a lot of research about that, but I don't think it's discussed enough in our community. And there's a lot of people who don't get diagnosed, especially women with ADHD, until much later in life, like 40s and 50s. And then even during menopause, it can cause a lot of I wouldn't say complicating, but a lot of the symptoms um, really get magnified in the hormonal changes during menopause. And so there's a lot of that. Like there's a whole training on unraveling quitters thinking, right? So where we talk about mental health awareness and how to practice self-care, especially, one of the things I talk about is sometimes self-care is getting ourselves to the doctor. Self-care is movement. Self-care is water, not just getting your hair and nails done. Or self-care isn't going to a spa, right? What is basic self-care? How do we, there's stuff about body image and wellness and motivation and all of that kind of stuff. So I think, willingness. And if you're not willing yet to get started on something, prepping yourself to be willing. So that is the membership that I have um, that I've launched recently. And we have in that there's also 2 monthly support groups that happen that are live, and then they are recorded. And then because there is the option to have a 6-month membership, a year membership, or a month to month, um, they will get deleted at the end of the month. And then we'll have 2 new live ones, and then they get deleted, and then 2 more. So that way, I'm very always concerned about privacy and security. And if there's turnover, I want to make sure that people don't think that, oh, there's my videos in there from like 10 months ago. So that's what's important. And that is something that I created especially because my 6-month group, which just closed in the middle of February, won't open again until July. And it's a 6-month closed group where we open for, about 21 days, where we have this turnover, and it's a 6-month closed group. It is a women's group, although the GTS membership is co-ed. So I find that, again, due to the 6-month group is very high touch. We have like almost 40 hours of live interaction a month for the group that just closed. And because we discuss trauma and things like that in there, and because 95% of the demographic that follows me is women, I haven't yet been able to put together a men's group. So I will occasionally get hate from men that are like, what men's group? And I'm like, I haven't found enough men that actually want to do the work. So when you find them, let me know. But yeah, so that's a group that if you guys are interested in doing the deeper work in a closed group, that will open again in July. So for right now, the GTS membership is the best way to work with me. And if you want to get started, if somebody is like, I really need something now, if you want to get started with the GTS and then, switch over come July, it's possible to do that.
Kristin, what is the best way for them to contact you? Is it through your website or your Instagram page?
I would say, people can find me via Instagram, or they can also email me, either we have 2 different emails. I have a support email, and then I also have Kristin@bariatricmindset.com, support@bariatricmindset.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. Those are probably the best ways. You can definitely also message through my website, because that'll go to the email. So I'm available in those places. And if I would also say, if anybody hasn't read my books yet, that's a great place to start. So if somebody's like, oh, this all sounds good, that's another place. All of my books are on Amazon. So
I'm going to share that too. I shared the link for everyone. It's in the comment. And if you're listening to the replay, these links will all be available on the description. So I'll make sure that those all get put on there. I'm going to share my screen, Kristin, and I'm going to show them some of your Amazon books. And whoops, that's our description from today that I'm pulling off of right here. Amazon. You can just type in Kristin Lloyd, or you can use the link. And how many different books have you written now?
So I say 2, because I don't consider, everybody's like, you have 6 books. And I'm like, well, Bariatric Mindset Success and Release Your Regain are books. But the accountability workbooks are workbooks, right? And the Rediscover You is a journal. So, and then Color Your Confidence is a coloring book. So I just consider that I've written 2 books, and I'm working on more. Like I have more in the works, right? So that's in process. I hope that in the next couple of months I'll announce a publishing date. But yeah, you can get the 6-month book. Absolutely. So the 6-month workbook is an accountability workbook. Basically, it's so it does have like a tracker in it, but it starts to get you to gain understanding of what your patterns are. And I also have you can also follow me on YouTube, and on YouTube I also like show you what's inside of the workbooks. Yeah, the Back on Track series is a great series if somebody's really struggling with it doesn't have to be just regain, but it's just, what are the things that I'm struggling with in terms of your typical back on track stuff.
So
And
that's under the YouTube channel is under bariatric
yep,
mindset, and the link
very
is available in the chat box there. I also want to just say you also, I know, have a bariatric mindset mavens, a private
hmm
group.
hmm
And is that for the
That's a
people who,
free group. Anybody can join that group.
okay, so bariatric
So
mindset mavens,
mhm,
and Kristin's, her Instagram is bariatric mindset is her Instagram. So you can go there as well.
yeah,
And Kristin, I also want to just say Kristin is a affiliate of ProCare. So
yeah.
I'm gonna kind of say, what is your favorite ProCare products? I'll stop sharing here for a second.
I I'm upset. Like my son even he loves these calcium shots. And I have to say, when he was in, I think it was either kindergarten or first grade, um, he had uh tripped over another kid in the classroom and ended up breaking his wrist. And the doctor, because
Oh,
he's not been able to have milk products because he has eczema. And so the pediatrician said, give him almond milk. Well, the orthopedic said he needs more calcium. So I started giving him the calcium chocolate. And
hey, you know what? Probably no complaints from him on that, right?
no complaints, no complaints. But then he's like, I got my calcium. So I have him in the pantry where, he can grab a calcium chocolate. So I love the calcium chocolate. I rave about the calcium chocolate. I love the multivitamin chews. Oh, and I don't have any right now, but I also love the salted caramel chews and the dessert mint chews. And those are my, like, I have to toggle back and forth because we can only get so much calcium, right? But I really like those, the dessert mint chews and the salted caramel chews.
I gotta laugh because actually we always do like a little problem solution thing on these events, and I actually did mine on calcium. So I'm gonna share my screen here just for a hot second and share some of the products she's talking about. So the sea salted caramel, the dinner mint, the cinnamon bun, the
Yep.
mocktails. Those are all different options of what Kristin is talking about. And if you use her code, which is bariatric mindset 10, bariatric mindset 10, it's not cap specific, so you can do upper or lowercase. You will get 10% off your order by ordering. And I have a link here that you can use, or you can just go directly to the ProCare website, saves you 10% off. So that's kind of cool. Stop sharing here. And I'm going to kind of jump on our website too, Kristin, if that's okay, real quick. And I'll show
Absolutely.
them kind of where they can find some of this goodness from
And
our.
I mean, I know I'm usually looking out for that email. I mentioned it earlier, like in spring, like when's the last time to get calcium chocolates before summer? Because it's like I've got to stock up.
You know what? It's funny. We were talking about that beforehand. And honestly, I don't have a good answer for that. It's like, it kind of depends
Okay.
on when the weather,
Right.
it's kind of like the weather, like when the weather, because I'm glad you asked that though, because other people are probably wondering the same thing, because that's always a big question for a lot of people is that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. It's procarenow.com. Again, procarenow.com. Um, the link will be in your description of this event if you're listening to a replay. And I want to kind of go over and just show you under products. If you click on the calcium supplements, I already got it pulled up because I did it ahead of time because sometimes it takes it a second. There's a whole slew of different calcium products. So if
Oh
you
yeah.
try one thing and you don't like it, now I will also say on the ProCare website at the very top, when you go there, there's a blue line across the top that says interested in a free sample, click here. So if you've never tried some of our products before and there's something specific you want to try, you can fill out that form. There's a comment section at the bottom that you can fill out and put specifically there's something you wanted to try. Otherwise, we just send you a random assortment of goodies. And then I also wanted to say we are starting from the ProCare standpoint, um, this Berry Connected forum. I'm going to click on to the tab that says Berry Connected. And if you want to kind of come and listen to the replay of this event,
Oh
if
yeah.
you go to that tab, this will be on demand. And I told Kristen, we usually just do it to the end of the month, but we're so close to the end of the month. I'm going to do it till next Tuesday because that's when this event will hit our YouTube channel and our Very Connected podcast as a replay. So the on demand through Zoom will be available on this Very Connected page. You just click on that and it'll bring you directly to that. There's other events that we actually also have on replay. So if you want other things, and then our podcast, you just go to your specific favorite podcast station and you type in Very Connected and you'll get us there. And then our Facebook page, which I showed you, Kristen's, I'm going to kind of pop on the ProCare. It's ProCare Health Vitamins and Supplements. And we have over 220 videos there now. So excited about that. And I also want to mention we just started a Facebook group, which is called Very Connected.
Yeah.
So everything's under Very Connect or Very Connected. And when you go to that page, it's our group and you can ask to join. We have a Facebook page called Very Connect and a Facebook group called Very Connected. So that is everything I have to say. Closing thoughts, because we kind of went over, but I feel like everything we talked about was so on cue, and we have lots of wonderful people that stayed with us. So thank you for that, guys. We sending you love out here. Any closing thoughts, Kristen?
I mean, I always have a lot to say because this is such a big topic. It's not there's so much depth and breadth to this topic. So I would just say if you're struggling with connecting with yourself, give it time, give it space, get support where you feel safe, where you feel that you can be heard and where you can be vulnerable, because vulnerability is courage when you're supported and when, you know, who you're with can hold space for that. When we can be challenged without judgment, criticism. Sometimes we do need to be challenged on things, right? Our beliefs. And yet, when we know we're in a safe space with whoever that is, that's where I would say, you know, that's your starting point. And when you can start to reflect and look at who do I want to become? What parts of me do I want to be on that journey? And what parts of me is it time for me to let go of because it's not serving me? And so again, it's recreating, coming back to you, you know, asking yourself the deep questions, and not a pitch, but the Rediscover You journal is a great place to start with. If you don't know yourself, that's a great place to go. But who am I? What do I want? And how can I support myself? Getting curious, being introspective, and really being an ally for yourself, being an advocate for yourself. You matter. You matter to this world. You matter to the people that love you. You matter. And you're human and you're going to mess up. And that's just a fact of life. But first and foremost, you matter. And I think that that's really, really important for people to see in themselves, that regardless of what you weigh, you matter. You matter.
Oh, Kristen, that could be repeated over and over. And we have a comment here, somebody saying that they could listen to this over and over. And I want to say that's a great idea. Go back and listen again, because I always feel like
Take
I do
notes.
that quite a bit. Yes, because a lot of times there's something you don't hear, you're not ready to hear, or you were distracted.
Yeah.
And if everything was resonating well with you, that is
And the
helpful.
last
So
thing, you can't hate your body into healing. I know that there are many different people. That's not my original phrase, but I really resonate with it. You cannot hate yourself or your body into healing, right? I think it's, I don't know who it was said differently. And I don't know who the original quote is from. That's something that is so important, is if we're hating our bodies or hating ourselves or hating how we got here, all the steps that we took that may have been, you know, mistakes or self-punishment, like how you got here, why you got here, it doesn't matter. You cannot hate yourself into healing. So It's really important. It may have even been a Martin Luther. I don't know if it was a Martin Luther. Um I don't remember who, but it's like you can't hate yourself into healing. It's really about creating peace and love and honoring all of who you are. You're human. You matter. That's it.
I love that. And what is healing? I mean, really healing is feeling peace. I feel like it's feeling peace and, not having those
Body, mind,
triggers.
spirit. Body, mind, spirit.
Yeah, everything's connected.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Everybody's
you for having me.
resonated well and so appreciate you so much. And I'll reach out to you right after this. So,
Awesome.
for everybody that's on the call, we love you. We appreciate you.
Thank
And
you for being here.
thank you so much. Everybody, take care. Have a great day.